This house was 18 months old. It was a new house, but I didn't know about something called predecessor energy. I could hear footsteps walking above me, but it's a one-story house. So what was I hearing? I was so terrified. But it wasn't just the footsteps. It was boom, 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 pounding on the sides of the walls in the house. You could hear somebody running down the hallway and there's nobody there. And meanwhile, I'm pregnant with my oldest son and there's nobody there, but they checked the back door and somebody was trying to jimmy the lock, which in the bedroom at the far end of the house we wouldn't have heard if someone hadn't made noise in the kitchen. Did the ghost just save us from an intruder? Every neighbor started talking about what was happening. I realized that I needed to stop being afraid of him and learn what to do. And I didn't even know that you could cross over a ghost. And so we invited an angel to help him, and we began to see the light come for him. And as he's about to cross into the light, he turns around and he looks at me and he says, "Why would you help me? I tried to do terrible things to you." And my answer is, you are not mine to judge. So you're going to use frankincense, myrrh, and another resin called benzoin. You burn that in the same resin burner on a little piece of aluminum foil. Now you're raising the frequency. The gifts to the Christ child were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But nobody ever asked, well, why did they give him frankincense and myrrh? Because they're so sacred and they're so powerful. Please don't be afraid of death. When death comes, look for the light. Ask for the light of God to be with you. Christ consciousness. Ask that someone you know, who you have known and loved, that can come to you. And when that light envelops you, breathe it in, even though you don't have lungs anymore. Feel the joy of the light and being welcomed home. It's beautiful. There are no words to describe it.
Okay, Tina, I'm very intrigued about your line of work. This is just like so out there. I know it's really interesting. It's really fascinating what you're doing, right? You refer to yourself as the ghost helper. But first, before we get into ghost helping, I really want to know, what was it that was your biggest influence to venturing along this path, feeling called to help ghosts?
That's a really great question. And the answer is that we lived in a haunted house in Charleston, South Carolina. My husband and I spent 20 years in the Navy, and we both worked for the submarine force. We both retired as Navy commanders. But long time
Mhm.
ago, in 1979, we moved from Italy, where we were stationed, to Charleston, South Carolina for our jobs. And we bought a house that
Mhm.
was 18 months old. And I mean, I've always been a little psychic, but I nearly lost my mind in that house because of course my husband was at sea. And the first
Mm.
night we were there, I was there, he wasn't there. This house was 18 months old. It was a new house. Nothing had ever been built on that property that I knew of, but I didn't know about something called predecessor energy. And the
Oh.
first night I was there, I could hear footsteps walking above me, but it's a one-story house. So what was I hearing? And
Wow.
the house was empty because the household goods hadn't arrived yet. And I was so terrified. I'm not sure I can adequately explain my terror of this ghost.
Mm.
I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know if that was an animal, but it was heavy, clomp, clomp, clomp footsteps. It was so cliche, it was incredible.
Oh my
But it
God.
wasn't just the footsteps. The longer we lived there, then it was boom, 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 pounding on the sides of the walls in the house. And you could hear the
Oh
plaster
my
falling to the
God.
insides. You could hear somebody running down the hallway and there's nobody there. And meanwhile, I'm pregnant with my oldest son. And I I am eventually my sister came to live with me and help me with, the baby while she was going to college because my husband spent 42 years at sea. And so the things that happened, we had a Halloween party for some of her friends. And after, somebody left us a bottle of Mateus Rosé wine. Well, I don't drink because I'm 5'1", and a little tiny alcohol goes very long ways. So I really don't drink. Well, the
Mhm.
bottle vanished. And then that night, we had cleaned up the kitchen. The house was neat as a pin. We're sitting on the bed like sisters do, yakking about how was the party. We had a pair of Siamese, and all of a sudden, the Siamese went poof. You know how cats get all big and scared? They look like,
Yeah.
chocolate puff balls. It was incredible. So, and their eyes look like these giant blue marbles. And I'm thinking, and then
Yes.
we
Yes.
can hear it clink clink like someone's in the kitchen doing dishes. It was loud. It was so loud. My sister and I looked at each other and all the hair stood up on our bodies. And I'm thinking, we have an alarm system in this house that will make you wet your pants. It's so loud. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what is this? So she called her boyfriend to come back over, and I called the police. And we told the police that the boyfriend was there and the kind of car he has so they wouldn't think. So they did. And my terror at having to open the front door was incredible. So the police come in and
Mm.
they look all around and there's nobody there. And but they checked the back door and somebody was trying to jimmy the lock, which in the bedroom at the far end of the house we wouldn't have heard if someone hadn't made noise in the kitchen. And then my sister and I looked at each other and we said, did he just save us? Did this, how do I wrap
Wow.
my brain around this? Did the ghost just save us from an intruder? Okay, so one morning, several months later, we wake up and
Wow.
it's now winter in Charleston and it's really cold. It does get cold in Charleston. And I wake
Mhm.
up and I turned the alarm system on. You know how you have your habit. And I woke up and it's winter and every door and window in the house is open. The front door is wide open, the back door. It's freezing in this house and the alarm system is still on. That
Mm.
happened twice. Another day I get
Wow.
up and I go to get in my car and it won't start. It's my husband's 240Z. Won't start, it won't start. It's like, okay, I got to drive a different car. Fortunately, we had two. And so I had the car towed to my mechanic in Somerville, South Carolina. And the mechanic says, it looks like there's nothing wrong with this car, but I'm going to tell you, if you had driven it, this part was about ready to blow and it would have been an almost fatal crash. Okay, did this ghost save my life again? Now I'm so
Wow.
confused. And then one of the most terrifying moments was my husband was home. He's lying in bed next to me. Our son's in a crib in the next room. And then I'm awakened because I feel someone get in bed with me on the other side of the bed. It's like a double bed. How much room is there? But I can feel
Mhm.
this man get in bed with me and he starts to hold my hand. And I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could not summon a voice. I couldn't cry out. I couldn't murmur. I was so frozen in fear. And this is your podcast, The Other Side of Fear. I was so frozen in fear. I felt like time stood still and I couldn't breathe. And I didn't know if more was coming. I think you know what I mean.
Wow. Yeah.
So I just laid there and it felt like an eternity and he was holding my hand and then to let go of my hand it took forever as he just let his fingers slip slowly from mine.
Mm.
And then when that happened, I I was so freaked out. It took me I think an hour and I knew that he's still in the room watching me, but he's dead and he's watching me. And so
Mm.
I call the Duke University School of Parapsychology. What do you do with a ghost? I tried sage. Sage is worthless. It will never get rid of a ghost because the frequency of sage is not high enough to do that. It doesn't have any horsepower. I tried putting salt in
Oh.
entrances. That's worthless. Burn a candle. Worthless. So I know all the things that don't work. This is a really powerful ghost. So my sister decided to contact the real estate agent about this neighborhood. And she said, do you know anything about ghosts in this neighborhood? And they said, oh my gosh, the whole Archdale Plantation neighborhood is haunted. It was been there since the 1600s. It's been there since the
Oh.
1600s. And so I talked to my neighbor, whose house was unbelievably as haunted as mine. She went to the garden group in the neighborhood, and every neighbor started talking about what was happening. One woman would come down, and a rocking chair was rocking to a blank wall where there must have been a window. Another woman would come downstairs in the morning. She had a two-story house, and all of her living room furniture would be rearranged every single morning. She was
What?
so terrified she moved. And so we learned about
Wow.
this particular location. Another guy said his home was built over a stable. He could hear horses all night long. And then the stories just kept coming. And Duke said they studied paranormal phenomenon, but they don't have a clue what to do with the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, there's got to be somebody who knows. And I read everything I could get my hands on. So I have this amazing library, and no one knew how to help a ghost. And
Mm.
I realized that I needed to stop being afraid of him and learn what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that you could cross over a ghost. And then what I
Mm.
realized is that I started everywhere I went, it seemed like there was some other ghost or somebody needed me. Or, I mean, let's face it, the South is really haunted. And you have the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the deaths from all the people who were on the plantation, the horrific things that happened to slaves. And I've crossed over, I can't begin to tell you how many slaves. You can't believe it. And I have 3 books, ghost stories from the ghost point of view, where I talk about all these deaths of settlers from all countries of the world and what they experienced when they came here, because I
Wow.
learned about predecessor energy. And then in the late 90s, I had a series of experiences, and in one of them, I was I was being haunted by a living person, which is a whole nother story, and he died. And in that moment, I could see him leave his body. My
Mm.
brother happened to be with me, and he said, let's cross him over. And I'm thinking, did you know how to do this all this time and you didn't tell me? But he said, I think that he was divinely inspired. And this man was really, really bad man. Not going to
Mm.
go into what he does, but he was really bad. And so we invited an angel to help him, and we began to see the light come for him. And as he's about to cross into the light, he turns around and he looks at me and he says, why would you help me? I tried to do terrible things to you. And my answer is, you're you are not mine to judge. My job is to
Mm.
help, and you're not mine to judge. Well, from that moment on, I realized I could do something called remote viewing, and I ended up with every ghost in creation coming at me and then crossing them over. And as time went on, the numbers were just, I had no idea how many ghosts there were. And I got
Mm.
faster and faster and better at time, moving 50, 100, 2,000, 10,000, didn't matter. If you go to a graveyard, you don't know how many people are there. Let's say you're in Arlington National Cemetery. People are buried on top of each other in that cemetery. Husbands, wives can be buried, vertically, one on top of another in the ground. That's a lot of dead. And at some
Mhm.
point they need help. So your logical question is, does anybody cross over? And the answer is yes, they do, but
Yeah.
a lot of them don't know what to do at death.
So, okay. So, oh my goodness. There's so much to ask here. This is like
Go for it. I have my best cup
so
of
much to
coffee.
ask. Okay, so how then? Okay, let's start with this. What can you tell us about what happens after we die then? Because then we have people who are crossing over, people who are not crossing over. What's going on?
The information I'm about to share comes from a wonderful book called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And I'm
Mm,
I'm telling you that because I think people need to understand where information comes from and why it rings true for me. And the
mhm,
Tibetans, yes, it's Buddhism, but it's still one of the most beautiful faiths. There's a kindness to Tibetan Buddhism. I, I can only that I won't go into that, but and what they explain makes such perfect sense. And this is what I have observed with the people that I've helped.
mhm,
If I'll give you the example. My brother died of pancreatic cancer in 2017, and it
mm,
came on suddenly, and not pancreatic, liver cancer. So came on. I helped him through the dying process, and then all of a sudden, it's like everything is accelerating. And
mm,
when a person is going through a slower process of death, you can see the effects of the body shutting itself down. The person can usually either see the angel of death near them or they can feel that death is coming. And
mm,
this is true whether you're about to be murdered or you're dying of cancer or you're about to have an accident. There's a part of you that knows that death is coming. It's one of the most strange and unusual phenomenon, but I'll get back to that. So, as the body realizes it's time to go, it's like
mm,
turning off the lights in a building. You have to get ready to go because the body systems start to shut down, and they shut down from the extremities to the core of the body, to the trunk, and then to the heart. Usually the heart is the
mm.
last thing because we say someone flatlines. When they
Yeah.
flatline, then that means that the heart has completely stopped. When the heart stops, the cord that connects the heart muscle to the heart muscle to the soul, there's what's called this beautiful silver cord, like a beautiful silver necklace, finely woven, but it's like gossamer. But it sits
Mm,
inside the seed atom of the soul. And that silver cord connects the soul to the body. When you dream at night, or people who astral travel, or you daydream and your mind goes to all these places, that's not your mind necessarily alone, it's your whole soul. But your
mm,
soul still occupies a structure to have mortal experiences.
mm,
Now, let's say that you are in a plane that blows up and it's an instantaneous death. Whether it's
mhm,
instantaneous or it takes days to die, the process is always the same. It can happen, whoosh, all of this happens, or it can take time, and families get to see that person go through the process of everything starts to shut down. They go into a coma, and then as when they go into a coma, a lot of them start to leave the body because as you're leaving your body, you can travel with the speed of thought. Let's say that now you're dead. You aren't encumbered by the heaviness of a mortal frame. You can move to anyone who crosses your mind or you cross their mind. You're in front of them
Mm,
instantaneously. It's called
mm,
traveling with the speed of thought. And when my mother died in North Carolina
yeah.
and I was in California, I could feel her standing in the kitchen. I knew she died, but they didn't declare her or pronounce her dead until, the next morning. But I knew at midnight that she had died. She was gone.
Yeah.
And so let me stop for a minute. Let me How are we doing? Questions.
We're doing good. We're doing good. Okay, so why then does some people choose to stay? Like, why aren't some of us transitioning to the other side?
All right, that's the reason that happens is because each person's death is as unique as that person's life and personality.
Hmm.
If you are a person who has a deep and abiding belief in God, in Christ, the kindness of the Buddha, the gentleness of love, loving your friends and your family, and you've studied and you understand that when death comes and that light comes, like in the movie Ghost, remember the Ghost movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick
Yeah.
Swayze? I think everybody universally looks at
Yeah.
that. And he sees that light come. He's not quite sure what that is because he's just been murdered and he's not sure what to do next.
Mm,
But if you're a person who knows that that light is coming for you, you walk right into it, and the embrace of the light transcends every faith, any religion, philosophy, atheism, agnostic. When the energy of that light envelops the soul, there are no words on earth to describe what that's like. You can't begin
mm,
to understand the depth of love that just interpenetrates your very core soul being. But
yeah.
when you see that light and you think, "Oh, I can't go in that light because I was born in sin and I died in sin and God can't love me. I'm a sinner." The
Mm,
philosophy that everyone is a sinner and God will punish them has denied an untold number of souls from embracing the light and being embraced by the light. If
mm,
someone is afraid, ask for Christ to be with you. If you're a Christian and you feel that you were born in sin and died in sin, but you're a believer in Jesus Christ and you've been saved, why don't you cross over when the light comes for you? And the answer is
yeah.
because you're torn between your guilt for being a sinner and your desire to see Christ. But that creation of guilt and lack of worthiness causes a lot of people to not cross over. Not everyone. A lot of people do cross over. Let's say that
Yeah.
you're a murderer. I crossed over my share of murderers.
Yeah,
Why would
man.
why would you cross over a murderer? Is that a good question?
Yeah.
It's not my job to judge them, but here's a concept that might help people understand why crossing over, not just the person who was murdered, because their frequency is very low now because of the act of violence, but the person who killed
Mm,
them, because that person at death goes to a very dark place, and the dark beings that puppeted them, they are puppets on a string in mortal life, will puppet them in death, and they will come back and murder again and again and again. Sociopathic,
Mm,
psychopathic killers who have no conscience reincarnate from the darkest realms of the fourth dimension, which is where all of us go after death.
mm,
And if someone knows that that person has died and they've done a terrible thing, and in the I wrote this book, the Crossing Over Prayer book. In this
mm,
book, there is the prayer to cross over murderers. One, it's not our job to judge them, but two, we go back to what the Bible says. And I go back to the 23rd Psalm. Lo,
mm,
though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Think about that statement. Psalm
mm.
23 talks about the darkness of the fourth dimension. So you leave your body, and if you are anticipating the light, it's pretty much there for you. If you've done terrible things or you're dying with guilt, you see darkness, or you're confused, or you died suddenly and you're not sure you're dead. So many different parameters. If I hear one more psychic say, oh, they just had unfinished business, that dismisses a massive amount of the population of dead. We all have unfinished business. Maybe you can't stay here forever. Sometimes you have to make way for other people.
Yeah.
So when someone dies and they've done something terrible and you cross them into the light, it doesn't erase the karma of their actions. This is true. I have a lot of clients who were sexually abused. I have clients who were human
Mm,
trafficked. Men and women who are horrifically abused as children. I don't even know how they get up in the morning. The abuse these people have suffered is so severe.
mm,
And so when their abuser, which is usually one or both parents, dies, that person is in a quandary. Should I cross them over or just let them rot in hell?
oh gosh.
You see how this gets to be complicated? If you
Yeah.
cross that dark person over, then what if the reason they are so evil is because bits and pieces of their souls are shaved off life after life after life? So that what
Mm,
made them human, what gave them love and compassion, caring, empathy for other people, was stripped because they keep reincarnating in
yeah.
the darkest places. When you cross them over, as it says in the 23rd Psalm, He restoreth my soul. Why would you need your soul restored? Because in past lives, if you didn't cross over, parts of you were just literally shaved off. Starts with character disorders, the narcissist, the borderline, the immature personality disorders, and then it goes into endlessly degraded levels of psychopathy. So when you're looking at that, the sheer power and the ramifications of crossing any soul over, even if they were viciously cruel to you, means that maybe in the next life they will make different choices because they have had parts of them restored. It doesn't erase
Mm,
the karma they earned because of the actions they took. What it does is it defines a newer, more enlightened path. And they get guidance in the higher realms you're not going to get when you're dealing with some of these dark, perverted cruelties that you see happening.
mm.
And there is no country on earth that has a monopoly on it. It covers every country, every faith,
Yeah.
every tradition, every culture. So let me stop for a minute. How are we doing?
Oh my goodness, Tina, you are laying it all out. Okay. So, all right. So, going back to, because you had a ghost situation in the home that you lived in, but this ghost seemed to be helping you out, right? But for the ordinary person, for example, who might not be so in touch with their psychic abilities or might just be so afraid of what's happening, what they're experiencing, how then can someone like that begin to wrap their head around, okay, I need to help this ghost? Like, I sense that there's something around, there's things moving around, I'm hearing noises, the house feels haunted, the energy feels off, but they're afraid, right? So, how can they get to a place whereby they can step out of that fear to actually try to help, to figure out what's going on?
That that's a really great question. And the answer is I know what that fear is like. I have an intimate knowledge of how terrifying that can be. And I would
Yeah.
suggest that the first thing is Occam's razor. It's the simplest solution. Ask for angels to be around you. Ask for angels to be with you, to help you. I wrote another book last fall called Psychic Children, Psychic People. And in this
Mhm.
book, I provide people, whether you're psychic or not, we all need tools to help us in these really crazy times, wink wink, when there are a lot of things going on that we can't necessarily see. There's tools in this.
Mhm.
I mean, I've written 9 books, but there's tools in each and every one of them that can offer you some help. But the first step is to ask for angels to surround you. Fill yourself with the light of Christ consciousness. Fill yourself with the
Mm.
light of Almighty God. Feel that. And then put the music of Mozart on. Mozart raises frequency. Everything in God's universe is frequency. It's a mathematical formula. God is the first mathematician. Everything is frequency. So you raise the frequency. Then, when you feel like you have a grip on your fear, then you read the crossing over prayer. And I did print these cards out, which are available on ghosthelpers.com if people wanted them. And what you can do is you read the crossing over prayer again and again and again. And that can help that soul to cross over, because there's an unusual factor about this prayer. In all of the stanzas of the prayer, it says right now. In the fourth dimension, there is no time. There's no gravity, there's no space, but there's no time. We live in the third dimension of time and space and gravity because it holds us in place to have the experiences we're here to have. All right. When you're in the fourth dimension, there's no time. So you're asking the higher realms to help you help this soul, and you want it done right now. That's what this prayer says. If you like, I
Mm.
can read the prayer too at some point.
Yes, definitely. We could read it towards the end. I'd love that.
Okay, are you ready?
No, let's read. Let's save it for
The end?
after we're done with the questioning, because I have so many questions just popping up as I'm speaking to you.
Go ahead.
Um, okay, so you mentioned earlier in this conversation predecessor energy. Did I say that right?
Predecessor, either
Yeah,
way is
predecessor.
correct.
Yes. Okay. So I want you to explain kind of what that is and like how does that even come about? What is that?
I am, that's another really great question. Predecessor energy is the energy of an action that took place in a location before you got there. And the echo of that action is still influencing that location to this day. And there's a story
Okay.
of a couple who bought a house in Colorado, And as unbelievable as this is, neither real estate agent disclosed to the couple that a serial killer murdered 5 women in his living room. And
Oh,
the agent put new carpet down so nobody would see the bloodstains in the wood floor. They
oh my
didn't like, and
God.
when they moved in, no disclosure, nothing. When they actually moved in, the place was so haunted because 5 women were still there. The energy of violence was echoing in the walls, the screams, imagine their fear echoing
Yeah.
into the walls, into the nails, into anything metal in that house. Metal holds energy. A tiny example of predecessor energy is, somebody's missing, so they give that person their keys, and the psychic feels the keys. What are they really doing? They're feeling the auric residue on the keys and that predecessor energy, and they're picking up what's going on with the person. They're making a connection. Because when you
Mm.
understand what happens on an etheric level, blows your mind. You begin to see this massive new world of understanding open up. And again, I'm grateful to you for having me on your show to share these concepts. This isn't wild and crazy. This is Science 101, because energy is
Yeah.
neither created nor destroyed. All energy ever does is change shape. So when energy changes shape, or in a house, it changes hands. Now this couple with kids comes in and they're hearing screams and it's cold and they're angry all the time and nobody's getting a night's sleep. What happens? It's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so when you see that, you you realize, I mean, that they actually were on 60 Minutes. It was so bad. And they were so furious with the real estate agents for not warning them.
Oh
Well, of
my
course, if the real estate
goodness.
agents revealed it, they couldn't sell the house. And so if you bring a psychic in who's going to burn a little white sage, that's not going to do anything. Take somebody with some horsepower. We moved from San Diego, had to get out of California. We moved from San Diego to Washington State, wink, wink. And my real estate agents had sold our San Diego house, were the loveliest people you'd ever want to meet.
Mm.
And a couple months, I guess a year later, they said, we have a house in National City, a suburb of San Diego, and there was satanic ritual done in the house. And every single potential buyer who walks in is so creeped out, some of them just run screaming out of the house. And she showed me the satanic stuff all over the walls. Well, let me tell you, they painted the walls, they replaced there's blood on the carpet, they replaced all that. It didn't make any difference because the predecessor energy of who they were and what they did was still echoing out, throb. If you thought about it as something that throbs, or if you cut
Mm.
your hand, you have a scar. It's a scar on the house. So they called me and they said, can you clear this house? They sent me before pictures and after pictures. So I said, sure. I mean, it's kind of what I do. So I remote viewed the house and it was really, really bad. And I went back through some months of stacks of time. This is another new term, stack of time. If you look at how long ago an event took place, it's in a stack of time. If you looked at a stack of books,
Mm.
the story of what took place is in this book, and then there's a new story. So those are all
Yeah.
time stacks of predecessor energy. Isn't this fascinating?
Yeah.
It's sort of
And
like mental popcorn.
that's a lot of energy.
It's a massive amount of energy. So I cleared the house. It took me a couple days, but I cleared the house. And 3 days later, the house sold. And she said people walked in and said it felt great. Now, let's take a very radically different example, a dentist's
Mhm.
office. Several
Oh
years ago,
gosh.
there was a friend of mine in Asheville, North Carolina, who had an office on the second floor. And no matter what he did, he feng shuied it. The business, he tried and tried, his business wasn't working. So can you remote view and see if you can figure out what is going on? So I can look at the column of energy from the below the floor to the top floor, because that column of energy is what he's paying for, because he's on a second floor. And the
Mm.
first thing I saw was a dentist's office. And this was not a good dentist. Ooh, he was not good. He caused a lot of pain for people. And apparently
Oh.
that dentist went bankrupt. But the energy of the pain, the fear, and the anguish was throbbing or echoing in the wood and all the metal parts, even though the dental fixtures, the chairs and the sinks, had all been removed. That energy was there. And when I told them that, I said, feels like there was a dentist. They said, yeah, he was really bad. He went bankrupt. I said, well, there you go. I said, I have cleared to the degree I can, but I honestly recommend you move, because it's a tough
Man.
thing. We're going to do some things with feng shui, because I am a feng shui practitioner, to push that energy back. But you may want to consider a different location, because the energy in this entire building is not conducive to what you're trying to do. And he did move to a new place and was remarkably successful. I had a real estate
Mm.
agent in La Jolla, California, and all of her office was fine, but her assistants who were out in the central office were always sick. They were sick over and over. Well, I can't remote view below them. I don't have any jurisdiction, because when you do remote viewing, you have to follow spiritual law. If if my client doesn't own the property, I don't have any jurisdiction to remote view it. I said, however,
Mm.
we took feng shui mirrors and we placed them face down. So whatever energy seemed to be coming up from the ground, which is what I could feel, we returned that energy. It's like someone turned a switch. They weren't sick anymore. But the massage
Wow.
parlor business below them went under, closed. And the massage parlor was removing all this toxic dark energy from people, and it was rising up into the assistants who were in the outer office of the real estate agency. That's a small example of predecessor energy. When you start to really wrap your brain around this, you go, oh my gosh, that explains this and that explains this. And if you looked at, a, a, a graveyard or a battlefield, whether it's in Europe or wherever there was a battle, if you look at that, you will see you wouldn't want to live on that property, because there's a part of you that knows, oh my gosh, there was a lot of violence took place on this land. I don't
Yeah.
want to be surrounded by the energy of that violence. But let's make this even more complicated. I had a client in Tennessee, and she said, can you remote view my property? I said, what are you feeling? And she said, it's funny. I don't really feel anything, but I feel like there's something. So I said, okay. So I
Mm.
remote view back through stacks of time. It's kind of an odd skill. But what I found were Cherokee Indians, Native American tribe, who, during the time of President Andrew Jackson, sent them on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma. And this man told me how he was dying, and his tribe left him in place on this woman's, as it turned out, her 18 acres, and his job was to be the guardian of the land. He was the kindest, sweetest man
Wow.
you'd ever want to meet. And so I brought in an angel for him, and I said, I think this nice lady's going to take care of the land. And he said, it's time to go. And I said, it's time to go. And so he left. So now I'm going
Mm.
back through, and I'm moving into more modern times. And there's a guy there in a business suit in her kitchen watching her, Whoa. So I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm not real sure." The last thing I remember is I was in Virginia Beach and I was crossing the street and I was on my cell phone. And I think a woman on her cell phone in her car hit me and killed me. And there was a woman who was walking by, and I think I went home with her, and now I'm in Tennessee. I'm not even sure how this works. Am I really dead? Yes, sir, you are most assuredly dead because you can see that you're in the clothes you died in. You don't change clothes once you're dead. So if you didn't wear anything when you died, oh well, it's going to be a surprise for the psychic. So, um, and that's happened too. So when that happens, and I explained, and he said she's really nice, and I'm not harming her. He said, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I said, well, did you see the light? And he says, yeah, but I'm not religious. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, so I brought in an angel, and I had him crossing over. Okay, so that's two different stacks. And then I'm continuing to look, and I see this little. She looks like she's about 10 years old, and she's
Mm.
hiding in a corner. And I finally find her, and she said, I said, sweetie, what are you doing in this lady's house? And she said, she's a right nice lady, you know, and she don't hurt nobody. She don't hurt nobody. She's nice.
Wow.
Okay. And I said, it looks like you're pretty badly injured. Yeah, my daddy beat me, and he beat me and beat me, and this one day he just plumb killed me. I think I'm dead now. And the
Oh.
only nice place I could see was her kitchen. Why did my daddy beat me? Why? And so I had a conversation with her, brought in some children angels, and then they crossed her over. And then as she crosses over, her absolutely filthy clothing, her arms were badly, badly broken. I think the girl died of shock from so much pain. What was
Mm.
done to her? Um, her the pain left her, and she was embraced by this really beautiful light. And then I didn't find anything else on those 18 acres. I mean, I have story after story after story. I can go on and on.
Oh my goodness.
So when you
Wow.
start looking at the things that happen on a property, you can't believe how much it influences you. I remote viewed a house in upper state New York, and she said, we're having all these problems. I said, don't tell me. Let me see what I find. I'm working and working. The first thing I see is back in the 1500s, late 15, early 1600s. I'm seeing the Oneida Indian tribe, Native American tribe, the Oneida Indians.
Mm.
And I'm talking to the shaman, and I'm seeing in the background all these people, and I'm looking at that stack of time. There's fire everywhere because the white settlers brought blankets full of smallpox, handed them to
Mm.
the Indians, and they all died. They had
Wow.
nothing against it. Well, a lot of the settlers died too. They didn't have any immune system because they were starving to death themselves. So they burned
Oh my
their
gosh.
houses, and they burned the Native American. Um, there were special. They didn't have. They had special dwellings. I'm not remembering the right word. And so all of that was burned. So now what you have is the predecessor energy of fire. Fire energy lingers a really, really long time. And so I helped remove the energy of the fire. And I talked to the shaman, and it was really heartbreaking. He talked about watching the children die, watching how angry people were that he couldn't heal them, he couldn't help them. And he said, "Why do they come? No one invited them. What's wrong with these people that they're so cruel to us?" And so you have his anger, resentment, and the energy of fire and death and pestilence, all on one piece of property and probably the surrounding area.
Mm.
And once you have that, you really have to work to clear it. And let me assure you, when you have something that significant that goes back 400 years, little sage isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
And so by clearing and clearing and clearing, and I could also see that the house in modern time has had repeated fires because the fire energy continues to linger. So when I talked to
Yeah.
the family and I told them this, they said, "How could you possibly know? We've had 3 fires in this house." I said, "Well, because that's what the predecessor energy is telling me. And anytime there's anger," and she said, "We're angry all the time in this house." I said, "Well, you might not be anymore. You can raise the frequency using Mozart, and a lot of the tools in the books that I've written will help you to have a higher frequency house, which calms the energy of fire, anger, rage, and deep emotional pain." So, okay, let me stop for a minute. I've been chattering here.
Wow. Wow. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. I completely understand what predecessor energy is now. I think that is very, very clear because, as you said, energy, it doesn't die, it just transforms into something else. Okay. So now, okay. So what would you advise when we're moving around, right? We move around, we rent places, we buy land, we buy properly, we set up businesses. I guess are we look should we be looking into the history of these areas? You said sage doesn't work, salt doesn't work, the energy, the frequency of it is not high enough to do away with a lot of that energy that was there before. So what do we do? You mentioned Mozart, right? What do we do when we have to do life and we don't know what the hell happened how many years ago, and we're just trying to buy our first house or open our first brick and mortar? What do we do?
I think that's a really great question because once you have an awareness of it, then you look at how many people have lived there before you. Well, if you're getting an apartment in Rome, you might as well figure it's 1,000, it's about 10,000 years of people living there. So you kind of have to go
Sure,
with the
yeah.
territory. But where we're living here, no one's ever lived on this property before except the builder, and he only lived here for 3 years. So when I cleared the house and I remote viewed it before we purchased it, the land has been logged, but and things grew back, but the trees are at least 100 years old. So it's a pretty clear piece of property. But the property 2 houses down, in the space of 18 months, both people who lived in that house got divorced.
Mm,
So since no one had actually lived on that property since the first owner, what happened? And that one's, I
mm,
suspect there's it's complicated, but there's a ley line. And when you have a crossing of earth energy lines, sometimes you can have something that's really difficult. So if you look at a situation where is it a series of divorces? Was there violence in the house? What happened in the house before you got there? Why are people selling? Go knock on doors, talk to the neighbors. Sometimes what you'll see is if you have a business, there's a story of a place in a big box store in Virginia Beach. So they have this piece of property for big box stores, like a Staples or Home Depot or Office Depot, big store. Fire after
mm.
fire after fire after fire. And finally, they made it a park. because, and the water of the park put the fire out. Find
Mm.
out, if you can, what happened before. But let's say you take your kid to college, and how many hundreds of kids have lived in that room? All
Yeah.
right. Well, I use something called dragon's blood as a resin, not an herb, which sage is an herb. And people use palo santo. It just doesn't have enough horsepower. Dragon's blood. And then there's also, and then if you want to create a, which clears a property, it does it. I mean, not everybody's going to be able to remote view through stacks of time. It's an odd skill set. So in the
Yeah.
interim, yes, you can clean it. You can bring in what called iconography, which is pictures of angels. Um, beautiful words. Have things feng shui. Use feng shui mirrors. But the one of the biggest things that clears a property, a room, is something called dragon's blood. And it's a resin from Sumatra. Other parts of the Middle East grow it. The trees are amazing. The Catholic
Mm.
Church has been using it for probably 2,000 years to clear churches. When
Of
they
course they
walk
have.
down the aisle with that thing that swings, which is a thurible, it's not filled with sage. It's filled with dragon's blood. And
I
it
believe that.
clears it clears that church. Well, let's say that you take your kid to college and you're in an apartment, you're in a, dorm room. Well, you don't know whether or not some kid committed suicide from that room, somebody overdosed in that
Mm.
room, somebody was raped in that room. You don't know any of those things because kids are so transient. Or if you get your first apartment in a location, you can knock on doors, but a lot of times people don't want to talk to you. Sometimes they're
True.
just afraid. So, out of respect, take care of yourself. That's why in this book, Psychic Children, Psychic People, chapters 39 through 41, I give explicit directions for the use of dragon's blood, not incense. See, people say, well, I'll just get dragon's blood incense. It's full of fillers. It's not the same thing. It has to be the pure incense. And when you burn it in a resin burner, which looks, this is a resin burner. This particular one is from Young Living. And you can buy them
Mm.
from Young Living, or actually you can buy them on Etsy. Not Etsy, eBay, which is where a lot of people get them. And what this
Mm.
stuff does is it when it melts, it looks like this sticky red blood. It's red. That's why they call it dragon's blood. Once
Mm.
you've cleared it, all right, now you want to raise the frequency. So you're going to use frankincense, myrrh, and another resin called benzoin. You burn that in the same resin burner on a little piece of aluminum foil. Now you're raising the frequency and raising that frequency. Smells really good. And the gifts to the Christ child by the three magi
Mm.
were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But nobody ever asked, well,
Mhm.
why did they give him frankincense and myrrh? Because they're
Mm.
so sacred and they're so powerful. So if myrrh turbocharges the energies of frankincense, it's sacred. Everybody in the Middle East uses it. I actually make frankincense water to drink because it creates
Mm.
a really super high positive frequency in the body. So when you're burning that and you're playing Mozart, there are some other tools in that book that I suggest people look at, because when you use these tools and you build a habit to use them, or you set some things in place that are going to put you in a good place for a long time, what that does is it causes you to be able to think clearly. With the
Mm.
amount of 5G right now, with the amount of stuff in the airways, shall we say, you need to feel as clean and clear as possible. These, just a little bit of dragon's blood, some Mozart that you play on low during the day, will calm things. You can also clear your car. Let's say that you got a car coming off a lease or you bought a used car. You don't know what happened in that car.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a, do you have time for one more story?
Yeah, of course.
There's a very interesting story about a friend of mine who's a mechanic. And he was a master mechanic for BMW in Orange County. And I got a phone call from him one day, and he said, "We have the weirdest situation with this M5. I don't know if you know anything about BMW, but an M5 is it's their hot rod car, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of great, but it's a fast car. Not that BMWs aren't fast by themselves, they're amazing, but this car is really
Yeah.
fast." And he said, it's a brand new car, but it was found and they had to tow it. And there's a bet going on what's really wrong with the car. Can you remote view? And he said, there's something strange about this car. I don't know what it is, but it's really strange. I said, I don't know if I do
Mm-hmm.
cars. And he said, try, give it a try. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on this car, and immediately I see this gorgeous blonde in a skinny
Mm.
little dress, and she's in the passenger seat, and she's been strangled to death.
Wow.
And what happened was the dad owned the car. The M5 um, was borrowed by the son, who's in his 20s, and he got an escort for the evening. She's a college student. She honestly thought she was an escort. Just for the evening, he
Mm.
needed a companion, but he wanted a whole lot more, so he took her to the beach and he strangled her when she refused. Well, as he's strangling her the energy of her feet on the passenger side, that energy plowed through the wall and bent the rods in the engine. And I could see the
Wow.
rods were bent. And so my friend got a schematic out of the engine and he said, "Show me." And I said, "Those two rods are bent right there. And you're going to find sand in the car." And he said, "Okay." So he goes back to work and he said, "I think those rods are bent right there, those two rods."
Mm.
And they said, "All right, because BMW, North America is going to send this engine back to Germany because it's a brand new car. I mean, the car wasn't even
Yeah.
6 months old. This shouldn't happen." And then the question is, should we call the police? And I said, "With what? I don't have her name. I think she was killed in the last 30 days. I don't know where her body was, and I don't know where this took place." And usually they arrest the psychic. So I crossed her over and then gave the car healing. In the meantime, the mechanic, gets the job and they take the engine apart, which is thousands of dollars in repair. That the
Oh
company,
yeah.
under warranty, they have to eat it. And there are the two bent rods. And BMW can't figure it out, and the mechanic can't tell them. Who's going to believe that, right? So in
Yeah.
that case, the predecessor energy was murder. And BMW had to replace the engine. The cost on a brand new M5 engine, and this was, I'm going to say 15 years ago, maybe 20, was $40,000, just the engine. So they sent that thing back to Germany because no one could figure out how that could possibly happen. But sometimes the supernatural creates a very, very bizarre effect in physical objects. So,
Mm.
wow, a lot of stuff that
Wow.
for people to think about today.
Wow.
Poor
Oh
girl.
my
She was
goodness.
so sad.
That is so sad. Well, all of the stories, like, I mean, people have been going through it. That is sad. The little girl, oh gosh, that was heartbreaking. So, speaking of kids, what do we do? Like, what happens with kids? Do they have a special team that comes in to get them when they cross over?
Nope.
Like, what happens there?
That's one of the hardest things. Children are clueless when they die, and their parents think they become angels. Children do not become angels. Angels are a separate group of beings that they're just a separate group of beings created by God. Human beings can be helpful, but they can't become angels. So when a child dies, there's mountains of grief that go with this. And people are
Mm-hmm.
so overcome with their own grief, they don't think about what happens to the child. How would they? It's not a criticism. How would they know? And in
Mm-hmm.
the crossing over prayer book, there is a crossing over prayer for children. It's the last
Mm-hmm.
act as a parent. Well, suppose you never heard of me in a crossing over prayer. What can you do to help a child who's died? Call in angels. Bring in a child angel. Ask the angels to pick up this child and carry them into the heaven world, into the arms of God.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can do that, and ask that it be done right now. I mean, that's super simple. And then send a
Yeah.
prayer of gratitude to the angels who helped you. You always show deep and abiding love, humility, and gratitude to the higher realms because they are there
Yeah.
to help us. But children, I mean, I have story after story after story, sadly, with children, including my niece who died at 6. She sat on the
Mm-hmm.
sofa next to my sister. She said, this was in 2003, and she said, Mommy, I feel hot. And she dropped dead right in front of her. And it took
Oh.
them 3 days to find out why she died. She was so healthy. No one could figure out what caused this kid's death.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister calls me and said, remote view right now and figure out what's happened. What happened was it was her time, and nothing I could say or do could change that. The best I could do was cross her over. But I was in shock and grieving, which meant remote viewing was very hard for me. So my brother helped me.
Yeah.
And when we crossed her over, we brought in the angels, we brought in the light. She crossed over, and her grandfather met her. I will never forget this. He got down on one knee, great big welcoming arms, and he just lifted her and embraced her. But she needed help. She didn't know what she
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to do next. I mean, it's not like you sit down and say to a child, now, if you die tomorrow, this is what you do. Nobody's going to do
Yeah.
that. Adults don't know. You're not going to tell a kid. So let's
Yeah.
say that you have a kid who is dying. Your child's dying and you're in a hospital and you're grieving. Bring in angels to surround that child day and night. And when death comes to that child, direct those angels to cross that child into the heaven world immediately, right now.
Mm.
That was a very important question you asked.
Wow. I remember my aunt, she was dying. She was ill and she was dying a couple of years back. And when they brought her into the hospital, they were making videos. I think my cousins were around. Some of them were just making videos of this. And she was my aunt. I have her on video saying the names of people who had passed on, like the grandmas that had already passed on, or grandpa, that had already passed. And she was looking in one
Direction.
di- direction, and she put her hand up. And this is days before she actually, this was a whole week before she finally passed, right? So she was already seeing entities when she got brought into the hospital, because she was already so close. Eventually she did go into something kind of like a coma, and
Yep.
she passed like a week later or so. So, like for me, I always thought like maybe there are people like they know that you're close and then they come to get you. And like I'm sure there's some situations like that where maybe like they're just people that are there waiting for you already. But I guess
Yes,
it's up
that's
to you to
absolutely
be
true.
aware of that, right?
That is absolutely true. So if your loved one is seeing, when my brother died, he didn't see that. But
Yeah.
when my sister-in-law's mother died, she could identify all of these family members, just like your aunt, who were coming for her. And
Yeah.
so for her, it wasn't fear, or for your aunt, it's not fear. I'm going to go be with people who I know and love and who are there for me. And
Yeah.
so it's like this beautiful, quick transition. Yes, that it can
Yeah.
absolutely happen. That happens all the time. So when they're seeing that, they're looking for the comfort of the love they've known before.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, yeah. So I guess it's up to the person who is dying being completely aware of this and completely open to this so that they can receive that and transition, have that nice, easy transition right away instead of being kind of stuck in this plane of existence.
I think that if people understood, and that's really the service that you're offering, which is a great spiritual service. So thank you for that. That please don't be afraid of death. People are afraid it's going to hurt. It's temporary. When death comes, look for the light. Ask for the light of God to be with you, Christ consciousness. Ask that someone you know, who you have known and loved, that can come to you. And when that light envelops you, breathe it in, even though you don't have lungs anymore. Feel the joy of the light and being welcomed home. It's beautiful. There are no words to describe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So um now when it comes to, I guess, our own time to die, I guess it's up to us to also be aware of that and also ask for that assistance if we feel like we need that assistance, or even if you have fear around dying. Because I know, for example, my uncle, when he was dying of cancer, he did not want to die. Like, we knew he was going to die at some point. Like, he knew that there was no turning back. He had pancreatic cancer
Yeah,
and he didn't,
that's
yeah, he didn't want to go. He was holding on for dear life, right? And for whatever reason, I wouldn't know, but yeah, like, how can we then prepare ourselves better? Because sometimes we have a fear of going, sometimes we're still hanging on to life for whatever reason. How can we then prepare ourselves when we are aware, when we're given the chance to have this, I guess, this prolonged death, when we're aware, okay, it's coming sooner or later.
you can feel death coming. I mean, I've been in some unusual situations where I could feel that if I didn't take an action, death was coming. Absolutely, I could feel it coming. Well,
Mhm.
I had some choices, and I could forestall that. But if you have something that there's no coming back from, and you know it's there, breathe into it and let go, and ask that angels come and guide you home. Something very, very simple. Before the person dies, if they're afraid, hold their hand, look them in the eye, and tell them that God loves them. Tell them that they are loved beyond measure. If they could just know and feel that, that when the light comes, when they begin to see people they've known and loved, walk into it. Their job in the mortal frame in this time is done, and it's time for someone else to have a life. We're born, people are born, and people die. And when we are prepared mentally to know that when my time comes, yes, you grieve. And that's really an important point. The dead grieve. They miss their families, they miss what they thought they were going to do, they miss the life they thought they were going to have. But that they can't get that back now. Once that silver cord is get cut, it's game over.
Mm.
So when this is happening to you and you can feel that death is coming closer and closer, don't fear it, embrace it. Open up your heart to the light of God, even if you never believed in God, even if you never saw the inside of a church. It's not necessary. Even if you never thought you believed in this guy Christ or any of the Buddha or Sri Krishna or Saint Guling or any of the greats,
Mm.
just open up your heart to the love of God, not spirit. God. Say the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word is God, and the word is love, and the word is hope. Pick a word, can be your word, and
Mm,
feel that love. And if you're watching someone go through the dying process, ask for angels on their behalf. Say the crossing over prayer for them when they flatline. It will be a great service for them. And it will absolutely be the compassion every single one of us will want for ourselves.
absolutely. That was beautiful, Tina. I'd love for us to get into the crossing over prayer, but just one quick note before that. When we have loved ones that pass away suddenly, tragically, we can still also read this prayer regardless of if we know if they transition, if they didn't transition, if they're stuck somewhere, we can still do this for them on their behalf.
Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter how long ago someone died. If you think your house is haunted, say the prayer. You don't have
Yeah.
to know the person.
Okay. All right. I'd love to hear the crossing over prayer. I'd love to get into it.
Okay, here we go. Dearest Lord above, I humbly request that you take any and all souls who have found my divine light of service into the heaven world right now. I ask that an angel wrap each soul in a blanket of healing light right now. I pray that every single soul will use the light bridge provided by my angelic team to transition into the heaven world right now. I send love and healing to all souls, no matter how they died, no matter their level of guilt, without any judgment or prejudice whatsoever, right now. May the light of your love, Father, embrace and keep all of these souls, now and forever. Amen.
Oh man. Wow. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Tina, thank you so
You're very welcome.
much. This conversation was so amazing. You just completely laid it all out for us today. And I'm so grateful for your presence. I'm so grateful for you sharing your stories with us and helping us out so that we can help the dead. This is just amazing.
Well, we don't have to be afraid of them. We can help them, and that helps us to grow spiritually on every conceivable level. And that's a very powerful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any parting message that you have for us today before we go?
I I guess my parting message is what you fear the most you attract. When you own your own fear and it isn't something that has power over you, and you learn how to deal with it, like I had to learn how to deal with the ghost, you awaken to a new reality and a new hope, and an inner strength builds within you. When that inner strength lives within you, you become a magnet to the light. Then you can use your light to help others. Your service to humanity is one of the greatest things any mortal person can do. And Kertia, I want to thank you with all my heart for having me here. It means everything to be able to share this information with as many people as we possibly can, because we never know who we're going to help. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you. Can you just please tell us really quickly where we can find your books and also just reiterate your website for us?
If you want to, my website is ghosthelpers.com, and you can reach me at contact@ghosthelpers.com. All my books are listed on my website with a link to Amazon, and they're available whether it's Amazon UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I sell these books all over the world. So they are very practical, down to earth books with very specific tools that don't involve sage. So there you go. So yes, ghost helpers with an L.com.
Ah, amazing. Thank you.